The cruiser wasn't broadcasting any signals, just a silent star killer hanging over his junkyard. The twin suns of Garros Delta bled through rusted ceiling panels. As a drawn veil slid under the carcass of a broken mining hauler, sparks danced off his welding gauntlet, lighting the dust-choked garage in flickers of electric blue. He hadn't heard a voice in 6 months. No customers, no supply runs, no broadcasts worth answering. Just broken things, desert winds, and the dull pain in his leg that never quite went away after the war. The galaxy had moved on from men like him. No medals, no parades, just a veteran-turned-mechanic on a desert moon no one cared to chart. Then the door chime rang, not the external sensors, not a long-range ping. The physical bell hand-wired, analog, and useless to anything without fingers to push it. He stood slowly, cracking joints like rusted pistons, and opened the door. It wasn't human. The alien was long-limbed, draped in a makeshift cloak. Its exoskeleton shimmered like burnt obsidian, though its lower half was clearly ruined, fractured chitin, atrophied tissue. A neural brace that blinked erratically, a Threxian, maybe, or something close. Its voice came like dry leaves in a storm. I need flight. Something small. 1 seat. I cannot walk. I must leave. Idron studied the creature. Most outworlders wouldn't have given it a second look. Paralyzed. Broke. A walking corpse. But something in its tone, desperation wrapped in dignity, made him nod. Then we'll build it. He didn't ask why. Didn't ask who was chasing it. The galaxy was full of monsters in polished armor, and sometimes kindness was the last thing left to trade. It took him for nights. The ship was more of a pod, half salvage engine, half repurposed escape core, and flight assist slave to a cranial interface drawn hand-coded from an old Terran drone rig. But it flew, and it responded to the alien's neural pulses like it was born to obey. When they launched it, the alien turned its obsidian head, a soft glint behind its fractured ocular plate. You did not ask what I was. You asked what I needed. Idron shrugged. That's what mechanics do. The alien said nothing for a while. Then quietly, when they come, you may regret this. Then it was gone. A small trail of thruster fire across Garros Delta's copper sky. Idron stood alone again, hands blackened, heart unexpectedly full. 3 days later, the cruiser came, silent, unmarked, not government, not mercenary. It didn't hail, didn't threaten, just descended low and slow. A massive obsidian dagger blotting out both suns, casting a shadow across Idron's garage. And that was when he knew this wasn't about what he'd built. It was about who he'd helped. The desert wind died as the cruiser settled. Engines whispered into silence. A half-ton of sand lifted in a shimmering column around its landing. Struts, cascading down like a morning veil. Idron Vale didn't move. He stood outside his garage, grease-stained and alone, staring up at the ship that had no markings, no lights, no name. Just that impossible silence, not the absence of noise, but the presence of something vast trying not to be noticed. The ship's ramp didn't lower, no external turrets powered up, no visible weapons, but he knew better. You don't survive the sieges of the Helix War without recognizing predatory restraint. A single figure descended, tall, armored in deep cobalt plates trimmed with burnished silver, ceremonial, but nothing about it felt decorative. Its helmet retracted as it approached, revealing a smooth-featured alien face with metallic filaments flowing like strands of starlight. Ishar Elite. Idron's blood chilled. The Ishar Empire didn't send emissaries. They sent exterminators. Diplomacy wasn't their way. You are Idron Vale, the alien said, voice smooth as glass dragged across stone. Not a question. He didn't answer, just flexed the welding torch still in his grip. An old habit, meaningless. Maybe, but it felt right to have something in his hand. The Ishar studied him 3 days ago. A fugitive escaped this moon. We tracked it here. Its trail ends in your garage. Still Idron said nothing. The alien stepped closer, tone lowering. You assisted it, repaired its mobility, built a vessel. That makes you complicit in treason against the Dominion. Treason, that word tasted like ash. The same word they'd used to brand him when he refused to burn refugee ships during the siege of Orange Spiral. Same word the Union command used to discharge him when he questioned the civilian death toll. It crawled to me, Idron said finally. I built it something that flew. That's all. That something pierced the Ishar blockade and vanished. You gave it more than wings. You gave it choice. The alien looked around, at the rusting garage, The silence. The endless desert beyond. Why? What was it to you, Idrans? Throat tightened. Not from fear, from memory. I saw men paralyzed from shrapnel, strapped to med pods, begging to be useful. I saw machines kill better than us because they didn't have to ask why. He looked at the Ishar fully now. It asked for help. That was enough. The alien stared at him for a long time. No anger, no mercy. Your defiance is recorded. Your location marked. The cruiser will remain overhead until High Command decides your sentence. Then it turned and walked back to the ship. No demands, no violence. Not yet. That was worse. They were giving him time to feel it. The cruiser remained. No engines, no lights, just there, watching, waiting. Idran sat in his workshop that night, staring at the stars through a cracked skylight. He should have run, should have hid. But where does a mechanic with a limp outrun a galactic empire? His hand hovered over the radio, the old one, hardwired through analog relays to avoid trace beams. He hadn't turned it on since Earth's last. Broadcast faded to static. Still, he flicked the switch. Nothing. Then, a soft crackle. This is the Soul Bastion. All hands, last transmission. Earth has fallen. He shut it off. Silence again, until a faint knock echoed from the back door. Idran tensed. He stood slowly, reaching for the old plasma cutter. Modified, unstable, but it still burned hotter than Ishar armor on close charge. The door creaked open, and in the shadows stood a smaller alien, hooded, hunched. Not the one he'd helped, but something close, younger, eyes wide with fear. You helped my brother, it whispered. He told us. Before they caught the signal, Idran rasped, the Ishar, they're culling the last of our kin. Because one of us remembered something. The alien stepped forward, pulling something from beneath its cloak, a memory crystal, the kind that recorded through genetic imprint, the kind no mechanic had any business seeing. My brother said you keep it safe, that, if we can't run anymore, someone human needs to know what we were. It placed the crystal in Idran's callous palm, trembling. Then it fled into the night. Idran stood motionless, above. The cruiser pulsed once. It had seen the visitor. It knew something had passed. But it didn't strike. No, it waited. They were playing a longer game. He looked at the crystal, faintly pulsing in his hand. Something inside it shifted, as if waiting to be awakened. And for the first time in years, Idran felt a different kind of fear. Not of death, of truth. Idran sat cross-legged beneath the old fusion manifold. The memory crystal balanced in his grease-stained palm. It pulsed with a rhythmic glow like a heartbeat trying to sync with his own. The Ishar cruiser still hung above the desert, unmoving, oppressive, and in his hands, he held something his masters feared enough to wait for, to watch for. He powered up his fabrication terminal half-functional, scavenged from 3 different wrecks. Its boot code still bore the seal of the old Terran Resistance. He hadn't used it since the armistice, since they buried the flag and told soldiers like him to go home. But he'd never had a home. With slow fingers, he connected the crystals, based into the decrypted relay port. Lights flickered, systems hummed, the feed stabilized, and then it spoke, not in words but in memories, images, feelings, a memory of stars being born inside tunnels of ice, of wings made from light, of songs written in gravitational waves, passed from kin to kin across centuries, then darkness, screams, fire. A vision of Ishar warships descending on a crystalline city, not to conquer but to erase. He gritted his teeth. The crystal was from before the purge, before the war of silence. It showed what the Ishar buried, what they feared. The aliens he'd helped weren't just survivors. They were witnesses. The memory shifted again. The crippled alien, his visitor line broken beneath shattered starlight. Whispering coordinates in a code Idran's neural implant began to translate. Old battle codes. Terran encryption mixed with alien harmonic pulses, a hidden relay, buried in a dead sector, lost during the collapse of the third line. Coordinates, humans abandoned, and aliens forgot. His hand trembled as he disconnected the crystal. They didn't just run, he muttered. They tried to remember. He looked at the ceiling at the silent hulk of the Ishar cruiser floating overhead, like a specter of judgment. And now I know. He stood, faster than his body wanted, dragging a half-built shuttle core from the corner. He hadn't flown in years, not since the last drop on Hades' ring, but war was muscle memory. He tore open the old weapons locker. Dust fell like snowfall on steel. Inside lay his old armor patched, dented, still bearing the sigil of the Phoenix Ninth Extinct. Officially, beneath it was the Type V neural splicer band tech, capable of synchronizing a ship's AI to the pilot's emotional state. Dangerous, unpredictable, human. He strapped it to his spine. If these Shar wanted to wait, let them. He'd bring the fight somewhere they didn't expect. By the second night, the shuttle was alive. Barely, a half-meter long. Single-seat propulsion craft with a stealth core and no jump drive. Suicide, really. But Adron wasn't planning to return. He named it Moth, after the kind of creature that flew into fire. Without knowing why, the crystal pulsed once when he slotted it into the nav core. The memory map unfolded deep sector routing, dead communication relays, quantum ghost lanes between collapsed stars. At the center, a data vault, buried, hidden, protected by an ancient code. He didn't know what it held, only that these Shar didn't want it found, which means, he said quietly, we damn well need to, but he wasn't alone anymore. Just after midnight, another knock came, this time at the front hangar, a voice, mechanical, yet familiar. Adron Vale, you patched my core once, said you never wanted to owe anyone. He turned, stunned. A rusted Sentinel unit rolled in military grade, obsolete, but still armed. Its voice was dented with years of disuse. Name's Rook. You gave me my legs back when my squad left me to rust. I heard what you did. How? Adron asked. Baffled, Rook tapped its dented head. The crystal, it's broadcasting. Barely, short-range echoes. Only things with damaged loyalty cores can hear it. Guess I qualify. Behind Rook, more shapes emerged. A woman in a pressure suit, scars across her throat. A boy with modified eyes. A clone tech slave limping on twisted legs. All of them, once forgotten. All of them drawn by the same whisper. You started something, Vale, said Rook. They tried to silence the truth, and you handed it wings. We're not soldiers, not anymore. But we remember, and we're done hiding. He looked at them, all scrap and ruin, patched together like his garage. It wasn't an army, but it was humanity, imperfect, broken, unyielding. He smiled for the first time in months. Then let's raise hell. The stars above Garros Delta burned red the night the first signal pulse fired. It was a microburst to brief to track, to narrow to jam, a heartbeat of light aimed toward the dead relay the crystal had revealed. The truth, whatever it was, had begun to stir, and these Shar noticed. At dawn, the cruiser moved, not toward the garage, but outward, climbing the sky like a black god shaking off its sleep. It split into 3 autonomous war segments each, slipping into orbit over neighboring settlements. They weren't here for the alien anymore. They were here for whoever dared to remember. Adron watched from his roof as the skies filled with false stars drones, dropships, skirmish probes. Not firing yet, just tightening, like a noose that wanted its victims to see the rope before it cinched. Rook stood beside him, optics narrowing. They're not searching, they're isolating. Standard pattern before a memory-wide protocol. How long before they start burning? Adron asked. Hours, maybe less, then we strike first. He turned back toward the garage, no longer just a junkyard. Now it was a foundry. Within, the misfits worked like the damned. The boy with synthetic eyes wired the sensor jammers from scavenged plasma inverters. Rook connected his damaged targeting core to the garage's old mining laser, turning excavation tools into pulse cannons. Even the woman Lara, scarred and mute, was modifying the fuel cells for overburn, turning every pod into a potential missile. They worked with desperation, yes, but more than that, with memory. Every scar on their bodies, every glitch in their code, every tear in their voices was a record of these Shara's quiet extermination. And now, at last, they were speaking back. The first strike came before sundown. A dropship descended near, the outer ridge silent, cloaked, standard infiltration pattern. But Adron was ready. He'd set the sandbed with old Magpulse mine, short range, non-lethal, but enough to paralyze a Shar neural rig. The ship landed. 2 elites stepped out. The mine sang. The earth bloomed blue light. Both invaders dropped, spasming violently. Their suits twitched and locked, neural links overloading. Adron approached slowly, plasma cutter in hand. One looked up, rage boiling behind silver eyes. You protect traitors, species that should not exist. We purged them for a reason, and what reason was that? Adron growled. Because They remembered who they were before you rewrote their stars. He raised the cutter and burned their comms unit to slag, sending a message back instead. He left them breathing but helpless. They would report what happened. That was the point. Let these Shar know the humans had stopped kneeling. By midnight, retaliation came. A war segment descended faster this time. No cloaking, no subtlety. The sky screamed, and the Moth launched. It wasn't ready. The nav system still flickered. The armor was patched with hull tape, but Idron flew. It anyway. The memory crystal pulsed with urgency. It wanted to go. Wanted to finish what its first bearer began. It ran spine-locked with the neural rig. His vision blurred, then widened AI and instinct merging. The desert became lines of heat and motion. The cruiser's descent path glowed like a target. He angled upward, past velocity safety. A warning tone screamed in the cockpit. He ignored it. Come on, old girl. He muttered, let's dance. The Moth broke the cloud barrier and shot toward the cruiser. Rook's signal came through from below. Interference down. If you've got a message to send, send it now. Idron locked the memory crystal into the transcore. Let the ship feel it. The crystal flared, brighter than the sun's. Then release. The ship's systems translated the crystal's stored truth into a quantum pulse. Launched directly toward the dead relay sector. Encrypted, hidden, impossible to stop now. He'd done it, but the price came fast. The cruiser turned. Its dorsal cannon swiveled toward the Moth. Idron had half a second to veer. Diving into atmosphere, the cockpit shook. A fire warning lit up. Armor cracked. To slow. Then a voice in his earpiece. Not Rook. Not human. You gave us sky again. It was the alien. The one he helped. The one who had flown 3 nights before and vanished. We heard the signal. We are not alone. At first, Idron thought it was interference. Then, his radar lit up 12. No 15 contacts emerging from the outer moons. Small craft. Strange drives. Ships like shards of memory come to life. Alien ships. Survivors. They didn't hail the cruiser. They attacked it. The sky erupted into war. The Moth spiraled out. Systems failing. Dropping toward the desert like a wounded bird. Idron blacked out as the horizon consumed him. But before the impact, he heard one last thing in his earpiece. The stars are waking. Because of you. He awoke to darkness, flame, and pain. The Moth lay crumpled in a canyon gully, half melted, half buried. Its cockpit glass cracked like old bone. Sparks dripped from the shattered neural splicer, and the memory crystal was gone. Burned out. Used. Spent. Idron coughed, groaned, and tried to move. His ribs screamed, leg numb. Probably broken again. The pain was old, familiar, almost welcome. Still alive, Vale. Somehow. He crawled free just in time to see the sky still burning. Above, in high orbit, the shark cruiser bled black fire. Alien ships darted around it like wasps, irregular, asymmetrical, free. Each one carried markings Idron didn't recognize but felt. Symbols of species purged from galactic memory. They had survived. They had returned, and they were fighting. He wasn't alone anymore. A distant engine rumbled. Dust plumed around the canyon lip. Idron reached for a shattered panel ready to stand, to fight again. But it was her, Lara. She leapt down from the buggy, eyes wild, bandages dark with fuel stains. She didn't speak. She couldn't. But her hands flew in urgent motion. He caught to signs. They found it. And then, vault opening. His blood ran cold. The relay. They found the vault. He rasped, coughing hard. She nodded, pointed to the east toward the Tarsus wastes. There, buried under centuries of sand, was the thing these Shar feared enough to burn entire species for. They moved fast. Idron leaned on Lara as she drove the rattling buggy across dunes. That hissed like waves. The signal beacon blinked. In the sky now faint, but pulsing, calling something ancient and buried back into the world. Others were coming to. By the time they reached the site, 3 more vehicles waited Kale, Rook, and 2 of the crystalline alien kin, survivors. Of the purge, their bodies still splinted and scarred. The ground there pulsed with a strange gravity. At the center, a monolith of obsidian, shaped like a spear driven into the sand. It had no door, no seams, but it hummed a sound felt more in bone than ear. Rook scanned it, his voice trembling. Not a data vault, not just, this is a seed, explain, IDRA and rasped. Rook turned. Optic lights flickering, pre-Shar tech, maybe older. something buried by those they tried to silence. The memory crystal didn't just send data, it activated this. It's waking up, reacting to your signal. Kale added, it's rewriting itself, like it's remembering how to open. Then the sky cracked again. A piece of the Ishar cruiser broke free, plummeting like a hammer. It slammed into the horizon with a quake that shook sand from the monolith's edges. The enemy had seen the signal too. They were coming. How long before they dropped troops? Idron asked. Rook replied, not long, but maybe long enough. As night fell, the monolith began to open, not with violence, but with light lines etching themselves along its surface, singing in harmonic tones. One of the alien survivors, a female Idron didn't know the name of, approached, and placed her hand on the side. It accepted her touch. The light flared, a chamber unsealed. Inside were rows of crystalline spindles, each the size of a man, pulsing with internal memory. What the hell is this? Idron whispered. The alien spoke, voice delicate with awe. Not just memory, not just history, this is identity. Our people recorded their souls. A hologram flickered to life, a projection of one of her ancestors. Speaking in an alien tongue, Rook translated, his voice soft. This was made as a safeguard, in case our voices were ever silenced. If this structure is open, it means one thing, that someone still believes we matter. The alien turned to Idron. You did this. You hurt him. You gave him wings, and now we are all waking up. A sound broke across the plains. Not the cruiser. Something closer. Troop ships, hundreds of them, slamming into sand like meteors. The Ishar weren't waiting anymore. They were coming to bury the vault before the truth became irreversible. Rook turned to Idron. This vault has a core, a transmitter. If we link it with your tech, we can scatter these identities across the galactic net. Everyone will know. Everyone will remember. But he trailed off. It needs someone to stabilize the pulse. Someone with a neural bridge already wired into alien and human tech. Someone the system recognizes. Idron understood. His neural splicer, the one that merged his mind with the moth. The same rig still fused to his spine. He was already half connected. You're saying if I plug in, Rook nodded, you become the bridge, the spark. Lara's eyes widened. Her hand signed rapidly, you'll burn out. Idron exhaled slowly. His body ached. His mind cracked. He'd spent most of his life fixing things that couldn't be saved. Maybe this was the one thing he could. Better to burn saving a truth than die watching it buried. He limped toward the core chamber. The walls shimmered with the voices of the dead. He took one last look at them all. Rook, Kale, Lara, the survivors of a lost race. Not soldiers, just witnesses. And then he stepped inside. Inside the monolith, silence was not empty. It was alive. The chamber's crystalline walls shimmered with dormant starlight. Spires glowed in slow rhythm, like the steady breathing of sleeping giants. As Idron stepped forward, the structure responded not mechanically, but emotionally, like it recognized him. Like the soul of the alien he had helped was still echoing in these walls, guiding him. His boots crunched on polished stone, the sound strangely sacred. The chamber narrowed into a conduit where the transmitter core waited, pulsing with a golden glow that felt older than light. At its center was a neural port, half familiar, half forbidden. Human technology wouldn't normally interface with it, but he would. Idron slid his palm over the port. A pulse shot up his spine, sharp, blinding. The splicer grafted to his back. Sensed instantly, light surged across the walls like thunder rolling in slow motion. Then came the voice. Name, Idron Vale. Human, mechanic, survivor, connector. It wasn't a language. It was meaning, pressed into the bones of his mind. Purpose. He took a deep breath. To finish what they started. The transmitter core opened like a flower of glass, then tendrils reached out. Idron didn't flinch. He let them slide into the ports on his spine, temples, and wrists. He screamed as his body seized. Outside, the sky boiled. The Ishar had deployed fully now dropships climbing into the sand like insects. Their soldiers forming lines along the dunes. They didn't speak, didn't issue warnings. They were here to erase, nothing more. Rook's target sensors pinged. First wave inbound 20 seconds. Kale's voice cracked over the comm. What if Idron can't do it? Rook turned to him. Then we buy him the time to try. They stood atop the monolith, alongside Lara and the alien survivors only. A handful of bodies against an army, but none of them backed down. In the distance, plasma lances lit up the dark like war fireworks. The sand turned molten. The first Ishar uni crested the ridge and Rook fired. Inside the core, Idron was somewhere else, not in his body, not in time. His consciousness floated through memory shards, like rivers of stars pouring through him. He saw the crystalline race as they once were, peaceful, curious, radiant. Before the purges, before silence, he saw Earth burn, forgotten but defiant. He saw every species the Ishar tried to erase, every culture they wiped clean, every archive they burned, and now they were remembered. Do you still choose to be the spark? The voice asked again. Yes, Idron whispered. The transmitter pulsed. Reality cracked. A tremor shook the battlefield. The monolith began to sing. High, clear, defiant, like a chorus of 1,000 languages fused into one. The ground trembled beneath the Ishar's feet. Some paused. Others fell to their knees, clutching their heads. In orbit, the remains of the Ishar cruiser tried to jam the pulse, but it was too late. Idron screamed as the neural current surged through him. His body convulsed, blood leaking from his nose, ears, and eyes. But he held on, transmitting identity vaults, the voice intoned, distributing history to every open relay, engaging truth cascade. The light turned white hot. His body gave out, but his mind kept burning. Lara watched from the ridge as the sky fractured with light. Tiny stars appeared, not ships, but data nodes bursting into bloom across the horizon. Memory spores, identity echoes, carried on the signal, spreading through the stars. The truth was no longer buried. It had taken flight. She turned as the Ishar troops began to falter. Their ranks broke. Some dropped their weapons. Others turned and fled, not from fear, but from recognition. They saw what their empire had buried. They felt it in their neural links. The signal wasn't just truth. It was awakening. Inside the core, Idron felt himself unraveling, but not in pain, in peace. He was becoming a conduit, a bridge between the lost and the living. A final voice spoke, not alien, but human, a memory buried in his own mind. You were always meant for more than fixing broken things, Vale, it said. You were meant to restore. He smiled. Then let's finish it. The core flared one last time, and Idron Vale disappeared. Into light. Across the stars, the scream of truth could not be silenced. The pulse Idron Vale triggered had reached far beyond Garros Delta, across decaying satellites and forgotten relay stations, into the cores of sleeping dreadnoughts and prison moons. Every system that had once whispered under the weight of Ishar dominance now lit up in defiance. The memory of the silenced had become a weapon, and it was firing. On the battlefield, the Ishar forces reeled. Their neural command chains fractured as the vault song tore through encrypted pathways. Soldiers, bred and bioengineered to obey, now hesitated. Some dropped their rifles mid-stride. Others stood still, weeping strange crystalline tears as fragments of suppressed memory overwhelmed them. Their empire had buried these truths so deep it assumed no one would ever dig them up again. But a mechanic had. Rook and Lara led the charge down the ridge. Now, Rook growled through his voice modulator. Push while they break. The alien survivors followed, wielding scavenged weaponry with a fury born of extinction. Lara moved like lightning, disabling elite Ishar with precision and vengeance. Every step forward was a declaration: you tried to erase us. You failed. Kale broadcast the signal wider, hijacking enemy channels, embedding the vault's data in every frequency. You wanted silence? He shouted into the comms. Then hear us now. Overhead, the stars themselves seemed to shimmer. The surviving alien ships, those who had answered the pulse, descended. Dozens of unfamiliar craft, designs the Ishar had thought extinct. They flew in arcs of light, weapons pulsing with raw, forgotten science. They didn't ask permission. They came for blood and for justice. From orbit, the broken Ishar cruiser tried to retaliate. It launched a final override command, a full system purge meant to reset the relay, to destroy the monolith from space. It never arrived. 3 alien ships dove toward the cruiser like meteors. One of them, the same single-seat pod Idron had built for the paralyzed alien, led the charge. It rammed the cruiser's override array at full burn. The explosion tore through space like a sun giving birth. Back on Garros Delta, Rook reached the monolith as the last wave of Ishar tried to storm it. He fired twin pulse cannons, body sparking, armor cracking. Shouting over his speakers, he held the line alone. We hold it together. Lara leapt into the fray, dual blades slicing through exoskeletons, a blur of fury and fire. Behind them, The alien kin encircled the monolith, no longer hiding, no longer fearing. They sang. Their voices matched the vault's pulse. It was not a song of vengeance. It was a song of return. And the Ishar knew they had lost. Inside the monolith, there was no Adron veil anymore, not in body, but within the system, within the endless library of identities and echoes. A new note burned brightest. Veil. Adron, origin, Earth, designation, connector, status, eternal. His final act had hard-coded humanity into the archive. Every race, every soul in the vault now carried a fragment of human memory, of love, of sacrifice, of building something just to help. He had become part of their story. The mechanic who fixed more than ships. He had mended the broken soul of the stars. The battle ended not with an explosion, but with silence, not enforced, earned. The Ishar ground forces stood down. Their leaders never sent reinforcements. Some units collapsed in confusion. Others walked away, shedding armor-like skin that no longer wanted to wear. The Empire didn't fall in one day, but it cracked, and in that crack, light poured through. 3 days later, the survivors gathered atop the monolith. Kale was blind, in one eye, but smiling. Lara carried her blades in a cloth wrapped clean, honored. Rook's body was damaged beyond repair, but his core spark flickered on. The alienkin sang their thanks. The monolith remained open, now a beacon, not a tomb. The sky above was alive with new visitor ships bearing flags of worlds once thought destroyed. Messages came hourly. We heard the vault. We remember now. Lara sat beside the monolith's central node. A projection flickered the life at Rand's face, half lit in the same sparks he'd worked in his garage for years. He didn't speak. He just smiled. She signed, slowly, thank you. The light pulsed once, in reply. The desert bloomed, where once dry winds scraped bone-white dunes across the ruins of the forgotten. Now green crept between stones. The air, once silent except for the low humming Ishar engines, now carried voices, new languages, old songs, laughter. At the heart of it all stood the vault, no longer sealed, no longer hidden. It had become a sanctuary. Ships came from across the sectors, not military, but pilgrims, scientists, refugees, historians, survivors, all drawn by the vault song, which still broadcast in 1,000 frequencies, voices of the erased, the lost, the nearly forgotten restored. By one human spark, the war hadn't ended everywhere. The Ishar still held territory, still had teeth, but their silence had been broken. Now every purge was met with memory, every erasure countered by truth, and where memory flows, resistance takes root, because when you remember what you are, you remember how to fight. Kale ran a new network node near the vault's base. No longer the white-eyed kid from the wastelands, now a keeper of stories. Every night, he translated recovered alien dialects into cross-species archives. Every morning, he taught children, some human, some not, what it meant to remember. He carried a piece of Adran's old neural rig in a leather pouch across his chest. We carry pieces of the people we survive, he once told Lara. She had only nodded. Lara never left the vault grounds. She became its blade and its silence. Guardian, translator, protector. Every new visitor was met with her sharp eyes and careful hands. They all learned quickly. If you came with peace, you were safe. If you came with harm, you met her first. Sometimes, in the quiet hours between starfalls, she would sit by the central crystal and sign the stories of Adran's life. Some of the alien children started signing with her. They had no names for the man who gave them their memory back, so they called him what the vault itself encoded, the connector. And then came the Great Return. 6 cycles after Adran's sacrifice, an entire armada dropped out of dark space over the Tarsus wastes, not Ishar, but something older. The Velari, once thought extinct. Their massive ring-shaped vessels hovered in silence for hours before finally making contact. Their leader, an elder named Koromad, ascended to the vault and laid a polished blade on its surface. This place, she said, brought us back from myth. This human, this spark, connected more than memory. He connected us. The blade was carved with hundreds of tiny notches, one for each soul the Velari had thought they lost. Now, they would begin counting forward again. Later that year, the resistance became something new. Not a rebellion, a movement. Former enemies, broken allies. Even defectors from the Ishar began to rebuild, not in the name of war, but remembrance. They formed a new pact, not bound by race or planet, but by shared memory. Their banner bore no weapon, No empire's mark, just a simple image, a broken welding torch, crossed by a crystal shard. Underneath, he helped us fly, deep within the monolith. Where Dran's body had dissolved into starlight and circuit, something remained. Not consciousness, not exactly, but a resonance, a hum, occasionally. A young visitor, usually a mechanic's child or a quiet survivor, would sit by the core and hear something. A whisper. Tighten that wire. Use copper, not synth fiber. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to work. When they tell others, the elders would only smile. They all knew. Some fires don't go out. They become part of the stars. Years later, a boy born with half-metal lungs asked his teacher, was the connector a soldier? She shook her head. No, he was something rarer. What then? The woman knelt and pointed toward the sky. He was a human, and what does that mean? She smiled. It means he fixed what others gave up on. And in the night sky, above the thriving vault, a single new constellation shimmered. Not one charted by ancient astronomers. This one was forged in the fires of memory. 5 points of light, linked by fate and sacrifice. They called it the spark. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human, and it never forgot.